Hello and welcome to Wisdom Loop. In this episode, you will watch the first part of my conversation with Dr. Nguyen on advanced communication skills. We are very excited to announce that for the first time, we recorded our show in a new setting, which came with its own audio and visual challenges. But we are working very hard to improve them for you. Enjoy. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Wisdom Loop. I am Shaheen Ighanian. It's my honor to be your host today. If you remember when we recorded our episode on essential communication skills, we promised that we're going to invite my good friend Dr. Nguyen to record a second episode which will focus on advanced communication skills, which is this episode. So
Awesome.
You're in for a treat. Thank you for coming back.
Yeah.
Just quickly to reintroduce Kui, he is a director of career development and minority enrichment at SUNY College of Optometry, and he's also a certified professional behavior analyst. So this episode today will be composed of two parts. In part one, we will discuss what is related to Dr. Nguyen, which is DISC assessment, and in part two, we will discuss negotiation.
Yeah.
Did I leave anything out?
No, I think that sounds good.
All right.
So let's forget the formalities and
Let's
get
do it.
started. Yeah.
Why don't you tell us more about DISC assessment?
Yeah. So I had never heard of this thing before. I think there's a lot of different tests out there. You think of the main personality assessment. You think of Myers-Briggs. But a couple years ago, when I first began my job at SUNY, we had a director from Johnson & Johnson come by, and she was talking about this thing called DISC, and none of us knew what it was. But she said that every employee of J&J, they have an extensive behavioral test done before they start their jobs at J&J, and then they would use that to kind of learn how to work and communicate better with everybody in the institution. And so she did a workshop on that, and fast forward much later on, I thought it was important that I learn what this thing is too. So I guess we should kind of talk about what that is.
Sure.
Right? So again, just like the Myers-Briggs, this is a different kind of test where it can you answer a series of questions, and there's a way to profile your behavior into one of four main types. Okay, so the reason why this was done was it actually was started in the early 1900s by a psychologist from Harvard. His name was William Marston, and he wrote a book on the emotions of people, and this whole language, this DISC assessment, is pretty much based on observable behavior of people. So there's nothing quantitative about it, it's all observations. Okay?
Observation of the person with regard to other people, or observing your own behavior and attitude?
Yeah, well, Dr. Marston, when he had written the research to write the book, it was observation of how other people behaved based on their perceptions.
I see.
Yeah, so it was purely based on other people's behavior.
So how is the test done or analysis?
Yeah, well, the test, there's a series, there's a series of questions, and each of those questions will have a category that it will assign you as either very strong on that trait or very weak on that trait. And over a series of the questions, you get more and more accurate information depending on the person that's answering the question. So they almost have to be kind of honest about that's how they behave for the test to kind of work, right?
So for the person that is taking this test, what should they expect to gain from that knowledge?
Yeah, so a lot of us, it comes down to the idea of self-awareness, right? So a lot of us think that we're aware, or maybe we're just not even aware at all, but oftentimes we think that we know how we behave or know how other people behave, but we actually don't. And so it really helps you understand, well, what is my behavior style, or how do I prefer to communicate? And then it kind of teaches you, well, there's other styles out there too, and that just because you prefer to communicate in one way doesn't mean that it'll work with you or your wife or somebody else. You know what I mean? Because we're all different people, right? So it kind of breaks it down to really four main types, and then it helps you kind of learn, well, how do I adapt what my type is to somebody else's so that I can be more effective when I communicate with them.
What are these four main types?
Yeah, so the four main types are, it's called DISC, so it's D, I, S, and C, right? So D stands for dominance, I stands for influence, S for steady, and C for compliance.
I see. So each person has like a portion of each of these characteristics.
Right. So we're not just one thing or the other, but we tend to have one dominant style that we prefer. Okay, so I think honestly the best way to explain this is to use an elevator example, which a lot of my colleagues who do this sort of testing use. So if you imagine, Shaheen, you get into the elevator, let's say at SUNY when we're students, right? You get into the elevator, and let's say you're already in the elevator and you see somebody running to get towards the elevator because it's about to close.
Right.
Now you're gonna find somebody that there's the dude that is just like, he's he's trying to close it, he's trying to get the elevator up there, he's got to go somewhere, right? Now that's your dominant personality, okay? That's the guy that is, he knows what he wants, he's very direct, he's very quick, right? He's not going to be waiting around for anything. All right, so that's your D personality, all right? In a very basic sense. I'm making this very basic. And then also in that elevator, let's say you have somebody who sees that person running towards the elevator, and they're like sticking their hand out there as if, even if their hand got caught and it got jammed, they're okay with that. They're like, no, we'll wait for you. Come in. What's your name?
I see.
I'm Kui, and we're gonna wait for you, and we're gonna get this up together, right? So that's your influencer. Okay, your influencer is going to be somebody who's going to be much more personable. They're very enthusiastic. They like to help others. They're more about the reputation than anything else you find out.
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So the patient that is not the patient, the person that is dominant, to enforce their dominance, aren't they supposed to also have some influence over people to be able to exert that dominance?
Right.
So it couldn't be the combination of the two?
Yeah, and again, this is very, it's just a way to kind of break it down. To kind of say, all right, this is kind of your dominant behavioral style, but it doesn't mean that you're just that, right? It can mean that you also have a little bit of the influencer in you.
So if somebody is mostly dominant, how can they take advantage of that information?
Yeah. Well, actually, let's skip that. Let's finish the other two, and then let's go back to that. How about that? All right. So then we're back in the elevator, and now there's two other people in the elevator, right? We have this other person in the elevator who, as the person coming in, they're standing there smiling at them, and they might even say hi if they're asked the question. But they're not going to be kind of like the other person who's going to stick their hand out, who's going to be super enthusiastic and talkative. They're your steady personality, okay? They're personable people, but they tend to be more of like reserved. Okay, they're not going to be as the extroverted as the influencer.
I see.
All right, and then last but not least, in that damn elevator, you're going to have this other guy in there, and he's looking at that sign. Those elevators have the signs in there, and he says, all right, I don't know, 100 maximum weight, 2,000 kilograms.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he might be thinking, all right, there's 5 people in here. Each person's about, I don't know, 80 kilograms on average. That's going to mean however many kilograms. Are we going to die in this elevator? Is it going to fall down? Right? So he's thinking about these numbers and all these details. And then he might also be wondering, man, it's raining today, right? Did I bring an umbrella?
Which personality is that one?
This is the last personality. This is the compliance.
Oh, I
the
see.
C.
So they want to stick to the rules and...
Absolutely. So what we forgot to say before is that, the first person, the D, it really explains to you how they deal with problems, right? The I is more like how do they deal with people, right? The S is pace, right? Fast, slow. And then the last one is compliance, right? How do they deal with policies and procedures, right? So you can see that the C person, they stick to the book, right? They're very detailed, right? So you can imagine, going back to your question, how do you leverage this information so that it can help you, right?
Right.
So if you're a C, well, the classic C in popular culture is not Steve Jobs, I'm sorry, a Bill Gates. Bill Gates is a perfect C, right? Because you're talking about someone who's extremely detailed, analytical, right? And he's used that to his advantage, right? Based on his successes. But he's not going to be your extroverted person that's going to go out there and, so that's his strength, right? He is the person that cares about truth and facts and data and numbers,
like
right?
Scientist or engineer, I suppose.
You would think that they are a C, yeah, absolutely. Right?
So if you know that characteristic being a big part of you, and if you invest on that characteristic, you could be the next Bill Gates, I suppose.
Well, I mean it's hard to be the next Bill Gates, but you can imagine that it can be it would help direct you towards a career path or to hobbies or
And make the most out of your potentials.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Interesting.
Whereas your C, for example, going back to your dominant personality, which is what I found that you are, I was kind of surprised by that because I thought you're more, you used to work in TV, so I thought that you'd be much more of the I, right? Those tend to be actors, comedians, people on TV.
Could be both.
Could be both, though. I'm not saying that just because you're one, you can't be the other, right?
Got it. Yeah. Is it possible for people to change?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I knew that I've always been an introverted, so I tend to be more on the reserved side, but I know because of life and personal things and girls and things like that, you adapt and you get better over time, so you can start to shift that as well. And the other thing that's important to note here is you're also different in different situations, right?
Yes.
So, for example, if you're taking the questionnaire or the test for DISC, and you think about work and how you would behave in the work type situations, that's more of a profile towards how you behave at work. I'm much more of an I at work. Okay.
Influencer.
Yeah, because
that's what your job demands, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's also I found that that's kind of what I've become over time. I've become more of an I. At home, when I've taken this test on a different occasion where I was like, all right, let me answer these questions based on how I would respond at home. My profile of the D actually goes up a little bit because I tend to be much more opinionated and authoritative at home, where it's dealing with family. Do you know what I mean? I have less to lose, so I tend to be a little more aggressive in my personality, I guess.
Got it.
Do you know what I mean?
So let me challenge you a little bit.
Okay.
Can somebody use this knowledge to maybe escape from responsibilities? For example, if you take the test and you find out that being the detail-oriented one was
C.
The C one, which is compliance, is your least percentage of characteristic. Can you tell your spouse or significant other, look, don't expect me to pay attention to details because I took this test and sure enough, I'm not good at it.
Well, then I think you're using just an excuse to excuse your behavior. You know what I mean? Whether or not you can convince your spouse or your significant other of that, that's your problem.
I see.
You know what I mean?
I see. That's interesting.
But, on a more practical level, I wish I would have taken this maybe in high school, or I wish I would have told my parents or if your parents out there, tell your kids to take this because at least it tells you what your strengths are and what you prefer to do, right? So if I knew that I'm much more of a C person, maybe I would have gone for careers where I don't have to deal with people so much and where I have more space and time to really get into the details of my work. Whereas now, for example, many years later, after I've chosen my career and where I work and everything, I realize I'm more of an I. I do really like being out there with people, meeting people, liaising, dealing with all kinds of people, and really dealing with different personality types.
That's awesome.
Right? So I've shifted. In a way, my current job is reflective of my personality.
That personality.
Because I found that I do enjoy my current position more than I did enjoying seeing patients one-on-one even more, right?
Got it.
Yeah, so in a way I've kind of slowly found what I've enjoyed doing more.
And you're better at, you shifted.
Oh, I don't know if I'm better at it, but I'm trying to be.
I see. So can you introduce some resources to people or where they can take the test?
Yeah, so I've given you the link. So what I recommend for people to do is just go ahead and take the test to begin with.
I'm going to post that link.
Okay, so go ahead and post the link. And what's important for the viewers to know is, look, there's nothing like extremely exact about it, but it's important that when you take the test to be really quick, right? So just come with whatever responses come up first in your mind, just do it. Just click it and move on to the next question. Because if you think too much, it's going to skew the result a little bit, especially if you know what we're talking about now and you're trying to get a certain result. Sometimes you try for that answer, it doesn't work, all right? So click on the link, start the test, and just pick the first thing that comes to mind.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to post the link before I post this video. We'll do that.
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
So, and then what you can do is, one of my colleagues from Johnson & Johnson who shared this with me, Nguyen Jones, she broke down like the different behavioral styles and what professions people are in one. So, for example, your dominant tends to be your politicians, your lawyers, your CEOs. Again, this is kind of it doesn't mean that you have to be that personality to be that career or to be in that position. But it just means typically, what do people...
Right. On average, you get...
Yeah, your eye, your reporters, your journalists, your waitress, your comedians, people who love working with others tend to be
part of the job is part of the job is important to influence other people.
Yeah, for sure.
Makes sense.
Right? I mean, imagine if you're in the media industry, I mean, you are entertaining a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
So
how about steady and compliant?
yeah, steady.
Just
You know, steady personality. You can think of your teacher, your social worker, your counselor, psychologist. Those are all steady type personalities. And then your C's, we talk about engineers, accountants, even surgeons. A lot of them are C's because you can imagine you can't afford to make a mistake here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. You're gonna have to be very exact and precise, right?
Perfect. Anything else to add?
So the other document that we were going to post is just some communication tips, right? So, for example, if I'm talking to somebody who's a dominant personality like yours, okay, these are people who are quick and they're precise and they want to be on point. I'm not going to start a conversation by talking about my weekend with you and have a drawn out conversation. If I'm going to talk to somebody on a professional level, I'm going to come to you. I'm going to prepare my case. I'm going to give you exactly what you need, and I'm going to let you go, right?
Right.
Versus, if I'm dealing with, let's say, a C personality, I'm going to be different. I'm going to be more hands-off. I'm going to be more numbers and facts and figures.
So, Kui, you explain how you find out what your style is by taking this test. How can you find out about the style of other people?
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, this takes a lot of experience and time and things like that, but there's two basic things that you can do to kind of tease out, well, what is that person's behavioral style kind of like, right? So the very first thing, very easy to do, is simply ask yourself, when you're meeting somebody, if you don't know them well, are they extroverted or introverted?
You ask them?
No, you ask yourself. Actually.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, you should be internalizing this stuff and talk to yourself.
Right.
So if I say, all right, the person I'm talking to seems to be very extroverted, they're going to be your dominant personality type or your influencer, your D or your I, right? So right away, you can already break it off into half, right? If you're extroverted, you're D or I. And if you're introverted, you're steady or compliant already, okay? So that's the first question you should ask yourself. And then the second question you ask yourself is, does this person tend to be more oriented towards people or more task oriented? So you can imagine your influencer, for example, we just talked about earlier, they're more people oriented, right? Your steady personality is also going to be more people oriented. And then the task oriented, people are more task, your C and your D. Okay, so just by simply asking those two questions, you can kind of tease out what the other person's style is. And then now with your DISC assessment, you know what your style is. You can get an idea of what the other person's style is. And then with some of the tips that we have that you can share, then you can say, all right, maybe this is a few things I can do to kind of communicate and adapt to communicate with the person better.
So when you go and present this material in organizations for companies, do you actually suggest people to share the result of the test with one another? Is that what you suggest?
It depends. Actually, I encourage them to do that exercise that I just talked about to themselves. So figure out what yours is, figure out where your teammates is.
Well, observation, observing other.
Yeah, and then finding ways to open that communication channel and be more effective. If I don't explicitly say, all right, go share this with your team, but it is encouraged, because the more that you know about other people and the more that they know about you, you can really reduce your communication blind spots. Kind of like driving in the car, the blind spots, but when you communicate, because if you don't say it out loud or you don't make it known, then how do we know, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, that's definitely encouraged.
Thank you for watching the first part of our episode on advanced communication skills. The second part will be about negotiation. I hope we can have you all with us for that part as well. Have a wonderful day.